Hey shawties, welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you haven't been here before, my name is Megan McGuire, and if you can hear that, that is construction. Welcome back. If you're new here, I like to do true crime and other things, which I think my next video is going to be somewhat about New Year's resolutions. Not really New Year's because it's January 30th. I had a weird start to January. New Year's happened. Everyone had COVID. People weren't going out. Went up the mountains for a little bit. Kind of chilled, relaxed, and now I'm back in school and I am graduating. In my last video, I covered a high neck. So once again, I want to get all the PA people out of the way, just because they're like so burned into my brain right now. Like, I just need to get it out so that way I can start on other things. But I said that my next video would be about Marty Graham. So today's video is going to be about Marty Graham, aka Harrison Graham, which is his actual name, aka the Cookie Monster Killer. We are going to talk about Harrison Marty Graham, and his crimes today. So yeah, we're gonna get right into it. I apologize for not posting for a while, but it's 2022, new year, new me, and I hope you guys enjoy this video. If you do, leave a thumbs up at the bottom, and if you want to, subscribe to me. I would really appreciate it. So we're gonna get started. So, Harrison Graham was born on October 9th, 1958 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. He was the eldest child of 5 children, and he was born and raised in North Philadelphia. Growing up, like right off the bat, in school, Harrison's teachers and his parents noticed that he definitely had somewhat of an intellectual disability. He had problems with that, and he also had problems with discipline in school. He attended only high school, and he was forced to drop out after 10th grade due to his failing grades and his chronic absences. His mother would later claim in 1971 that he was diagnosed with a mental disorder, but never told anyone else about it. Which is why he spent 2 years in a children's mental facility, but this has not been verified. In the early 1970s, Graham entered the workforce, and over the following years, he mastered in many professions. Mastered in many trades. He was good at construction and like handiwork, which is why down the line you'll see why he was sketchy, but like his neighbors liked him so much because he did handiwork for them. Like, he had a good reputation in the construction industry. During this period, he began to drink alcohol, which it's never good. And then he decided to use drugs on top of that. And then he decided to start spending his time with some pimps and drug dealers and prostitutes, which is key in this case. So he kind of started living out on the street. Like, his mom wasn't really a fan of what he was doing, so he would like live with friends and he would do this and that and the other thing. But he moved out in 1979 from his parents' house, and he moved to North Philadelphia, and he had found housing, and then this is when he began to start drinking, using alcohol, hanging out with pimps and drug dealers and prostitutes. He was never considered violent towards others and never one to be considered to commit a crime. But in 1983, Harrison rented an apartment in a housing complex with mostly vacant spaces. So the houses near him were all vacant. He didn't really have neighbors at first. Maybe that's why he started doing what he was doing. But he actually started to buy and sell drugs. And he was known in the neighborhood. Like I said before, he was like a handyman, so people off the bat trusted him. He had friends, he had like people in the neighborhood that like everyone knew who he was. So no one was like, who is this guy? He's sketchy. They were just like, oh, it's Marty, whatever. He turned his apartment into a drug den, basically, and his friends and acquaintances would also come and buy and use drugs in his apartment. And this is kind of how he got started with his crimes. I mean, obviously selling drugs is a crime, but I mean his more serious crimes. So, nevertheless, Marty never engaged in violent acts. He regularly paid his rent, and he played basketball with the local youth, and he was living off his disability pension, and was described as a nice man by his friends and neighbors alike. We're going to get into how this man, who was loved by his neighborhood, and how the things he did took a turn for the worst. Marty. Oh, Marty. I'm not laughing. I'm just, like, I know people aren't smart, but, like, be a little bit smarter. The summer of 1987, Marty was still living in his apartment, drug den, whatever, pushing drugs. People came over. Nothing out of the ordinary, right? His neighbors actually started to call and say there was a foul smell coming from his apartment, and they said like it stunk, like he needs to clean it up, or like we're gonna call the landlord, which they did. So the landlord talked to Marty and was like, hey, like, what's going on? Like, why does it stink? Marty just kind of was just like, I'm trash and shit, whatever. It ended up getting so bad, the smell, that his landlord had to kick him out. So he basically ignored the remarks from his landlord, and then he eventually was kicked out of his apartment. On August 9th, the landlord demanded that Marty leave the premises. So he was kicked out, and something that I didn't know happened. So I guess during this time, which I guess also happens to other like vacant apartments, when they leave, they close it up and they like put wood over it and basically put it shut, like seal it shut so no one else can go in, and it's just like, oh, it's just a vacant apartment, whatever, like who cares? So Marty actually did this when he left his apartment, and you will see why in a minute. He refused to let anyone in, and he boarded up the front door with boards before collecting his personal items and fleeing via the fire escape. After the landlord was unable to enter the apartment, he called the police. I'm going to go into detail about what the police found, and I want to give a warning. It is disgusting and it's foul and it's very heartbreaking what they found. So the officer who responded to the call said they could smell death when they walked into the complex. He followed the smell up to the third floor apartment, which was Marty's, and he found moldy newspapers, food containers, and a pile of filthy clothes and dried feces before he went inside. He also stated that someone had drawn a naked woman on the wall, and the words were written in blood. So Marty actually nailed his bedroom door shut as well. So when he reached the nailed shut room, he looked through the keyhole, and the first thing he could see was a pair of legs sticking out. At first glance, he thought the person was alive, so he demanded that they open the door, but there was no response. This led to him calling for backup. The door was pried open, and on the mattress was a body of a decomposing African-American woman. Besides the bed, there was another decomposing body, female body. At first, the officers were not sure if these women had died due to a drug overdose, but when they searched the rest of the apartment, a woman was so decomposed that she was only a skeleton. and they realized what was happening. It had been happening for a long time. So far, 3 women's bodies have been found in this room, and these mattresses, all this stuff. A 4th body was found wrapped in sheets, and she was pretty much mummified. In between 2 mattresses was a 5th body that was so decomposed it was impossible to tell if it was a male or a female. So in the closet, among with a shit ton of trash, there was a 6th body of a woman. These are all African American women, by the way. The search for that day was called off because of the extreme heat. On the next day, August 10th, investigators searched outside the apartment and found a leg and a foot on the top of the building. So the investigators searched outside of the apartment and found a leg on top of the building. 5 days later, they brought in the search to another apartment complex down the street where a body was found in the basement, very wrapped similarly to his other victims. Police quickly identified Graham as the #1 suspect in all of these bodies and cases, and they were quick to get his photo out for everyone to be on the lookout for him. On August 17th, Graham's mother received a call asking her to bring him in. She convinced him to turn himself in, so he did. You can definitely tell that he cared what his mother thought about him, but I wish that she had kept a closer eye on him because of all of this shit. The police were notified of his location, and they met him on the street corner where he turned himself in. Now, when the police went into his apartment, they found a Cookie Monster doll that was like just sitting on his bureau, and it has like handcuffs on it. It's very weird, but he has like a weird attachment to Cookie Monster and this doll, and I will get into that more in the interrogation and his trial and everything there, okay? Again, with the Cookie Monster thing, said when he was evicted, and he left a raggedy old blue Cookie Monster behind. Like I described this Cookie Monster. He has like leather handcuffs on him, a little weird. But investigators had learned that he was known to take long walks, play basketball with the local kids, and he liked to entertain them with his Cookie Monster. So he would talk to his puppet all the time, and he would also talk like the Cookie Monster all the time. We're gonna get into the trial and what he had to say about these murders. When Graham was interrogated by the police, he wrote a 10-page long confession, and his public defender said that Graham was suffering a mental illness during the arraignment, so he was incapable of making a confession. So despite his mother being in the interrogation, he claimed that Graham was told he couldn't have an attorney present. He was assessed by a psychiatrist who said his IQ was only 63, which, if you remember in the last video, this is way below average, and Gary Heidnick had a above average IQ. So there's the contrast of them. He said that Graham had psychosis, chronic paranoia, auditory hallucinations, and blackouts because of his drug abuse. He argued that he was mentally unwell and that he had multiple personality disorders. Graham would regularly speak in second and third person, and one of his personalities, Marty, was an easygoing handyman who was popular, which is who he was, and the other one was Frank, who hated women, and Frank's personality was the one who killed women while engaged in necrophilia. I'm gonna hold this. So Marty basically confessed to killing the woman he found in his apartment, but was hazy about the details. He said he accidentally killed them during sex, and he later admitted that he was under the influence of drugs, as were the victims, and he was of full remorse. He also goes on to say that, he didn't do it on purpose. Like, they liked rough sex, they were strangling him, he killed them. But then, dude, call the cops and or get them help, call their parents, any other suggestion instead of continuing to do it. A witness named Paula was brought forward who claimed she lived with Graham for 3 years. According to her, Graham often strangled her during sex. He bragged about killing Robin DeShazer and having sex with her corpse. She was also scared to leave because he killed DeShazer because she threatened to leave him. Now I will get into the women who he killed. I'm not going to speak on their backside or their history. I'm just going to state their names. So Robin DeShazer was one, Cynthia Brooks, Valerie Jameson, Mary Jeter, Barbara Mahoney, Sandra Garvin, and Patricia Franklin. What I was told in class is that these women were friends with him. They went with him to get drugs, and according to him, he says that they all engaged in consensual sex, but we will never know because of what he did. We cannot ask them, but also the ones that he could, necrophilia is not consensual. So Graham told the judge on March 8th that he wasn't a killer. He said someone else had done it, and they stuffed him in his apartment. Make that make sense? He waived his right to a jury and put his fate in the hands of the judge. On March 8th, Graham was found guilty on all accounts of first-degree murder and abuses of corpse. Graham had no reaction to the verdict, and when it came back, he asked to get his Cookie Monster back. In May, the judge ruled that he would give Graham 6 death sentences, but Graham had to spend the first life in prison. So, he would not get executed. In 1994, the Supreme Court conducted a systematic review and decided that Graham's sentence was illegal and unethical. So, an execution date of December 7th, 1998 was set by, ironically, the same judge who gave him the first verdict. I also want to state that I'm going to show a picture of him and Gary Heinick, both in the same prison. Their crimes took place during the same times, which is also why I wanted to do them together. But these are probably the two most infamous serial killers within Pennsylvania and with Philadelphia alike. So after an appeal in 2008-22, because of you cannot execute someone with a low IQ, basically, but although his IQ was under 70, he was still a functioning adult, so they said that this did not work. He has not been executed. Like I said, Gary Heinick was the last one executed within the state of Pennsylvania, and Graham, still remains in prison and will not be released. He is described as non-violent and has attained a religious minister's certification and continues to practice his faith. That is the case behind Marty Graham, Harrison Marty Graham, if you will. He is still in prison, he is still alive, and he is an ordained minister. Honestly, you would think there would be more podcasts or more information about him, and there isn't, so that's why I made this video. So I hope you guys like it. Please leave a thumbs up and subscribe to me if you want more. I want to switch it up next video, really badly. Not because I don't love doing true crime, it's because I have to be not in the mood to do it, in the right mindset to be able to share these stories and research them, because they're sad. They suck. These women didn't deserve what they had done to them, and post-mortem as well. They deserved proper burials, their families to be notified. No one deserves what they had. If you have any suggestions for me, please leave a comment down below. And again, I would like to hear your New Year's resolutions or your goals for 2022. I really have a good feeling about this year. So let's make it a good one. Guys, have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one.